My name is Sammy. I was born in a small village. I was the oldest child. My life was never easy. We had no car, we had no money, we had no big plans. But we had each other. My father worked hard. He came home tired. His hands were rough, but his heart was kind. My mother cooked all day. She cleaned every room. She smiled through pain and never asked for rest. As the firstborn son, I learned early. I listened to rules and followed without questions. At age 13, I left games behind. I woke up early and helped my father. I fed the animals. I carried water. I fixed the fence and stayed quiet. At night I studied. I read in silence. My books were old, but my dreams were big. I wanted more. I dreamed of college. I dreamed of travel. I dreamed of building things. My teacher said, "You are smart." My friends said, "You will leave." But I said nothing. I knew my place. I knew my family. I knew our limits. I stayed in line. My father got sick. The money stopped. We had no choice. I had to work. I found a job. In a small shop, I sold seeds and packed tools. The pay was low, but it helped us. It paid for food and some medicine. Every month I brought my pay, I gave it all and kept nothing. My brothers ate, my parents smiled, and that was enough. Or so I thought. Years passed by. My friends moved on, they found new jobs, they left the village. Some became teachers, some became drivers, some started shops, some married fast. But I stayed home, I stayed in place, I stayed in silence, I stayed for them. I told myself, it's okay. I told myself, later maybe, but later never came. My younger brother married. I paid his rent. I helped his wife. I raised his child. My father needed care. I cleaned his wounds. I fed him soup. I gave him time. My mother got older. She moved slow. Her back hurt. Her smile faded. Still I worked. Still I walked. Still I gave. Still I stayed. The people liked me. They said, Sammy is good. They said he is kind. They said he helps all. But they never asked if I was tired, if I had dreams, or if I felt lost. I never told anyone. I just smiled. I just nodded. I just stayed quiet. Even when I cried, I did it alone, with no light on and no sound heard. One night I cleaned under my bed. I found a box full of old papers. Inside were books, some old notes, a map of cities, and a dream I wrote. I read my words. I saw my hopes. I touched my dream, and it felt far. I said, "Who is this?" I said, "Did I write this?" I said, "What happened to me?" I stood in front of a small mirror. I looked close and saw someone else. Not a dreamer, not a student, not a builder, just a tired man. But deep inside I felt a voice. It was small, but still alive. It said, "You are still here." It said, "You can change." It said, "Not too late." I closed the box. I sat in silence. I didn't cry, but I didn't smile. Outside was cold, the night was dark, the world was big, but I was small. Still I thought, still I hoped, still I believed in something more. And that was the first quiet moment when I began to think for myself. The days got longer, the air felt heavy, the work grew harder, and the smile faded. My hands were tired, my back was sore, my eyes were dull, and my heart was slow. I walked to work on the same road, saw the same faces, and heard the same words. People waved kindly, people said thanks, people nodded often, but no one asked more. Sometimes I sat on the store steps, watched cars pass and dreams drift away. I saw young boys riding fast bikes, wearing new clothes, laughing with joy. I saw girls smiling, holding phones tight, walking with hope, dreaming of more. I smiled at them, but inside I hurt, not with anger, but with quiet loss. The years moved fast, my youth was gone, my hair turned gray, my body felt old. But still I worked, and still I stayed, and still I helped, and still I waited. One winter night my friend returned. He left the village 10 years ago. He wore new shoes, he spoke with style, he shared his life with pride and joy. He asked me softly, "What about you?" I paused a second, then said, "I stayed." He said, "You're strong." He said, "You gave." He said, "They need you." But I just nodded. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel much. Just quiet inside. He left again, back to the city, back to his dreams, while I swept the floor. Some nights I wrote on small papers, not for stories, but for my thoughts. I wrote about time. I wrote about fear. I wrote about silence and waiting too long. I wrote one line again and again. I am still here, but not really me. I hid the notes under my bed next to the box with my forgotten plans. One day I met a girl from town. She came to buy some garden tools. She smiled at me, asked about seeds, spoke with light, and laughed with ease. She came again the next 2 weeks, bought more plants, and talked some more. Her name was Noor. Her eyes were bright. Her words were warm. Her spirit was kind. She asked me once, "Do you travel?" I said, "Not really," and looked away. She said, "You should," she said. "You can," she said. "Even short trips." I laughed a bit, said, "Maybe one day." But I felt a spark I didn't expect. She made me think about small things, like buying books or walking far. I started reading at night again, old pages first, then newer ones. I watched the sky from my rooftop, counted stars slowly, and dreamed in quiet. One evening came with soft wind. I stood alone and whispered a wish. It was simple words. Let me try. Nothing fancy, just pure and true. My friend from school opened a cafe, asked me to join just part-time help. It felt strange, serving coffee cups, greeting strangers, learning new things. But I liked it. The noise was light, the people smiled, and the world felt new. I worked 2 jobs, the store by day, the cafe by night, and I felt alive. I saw Noor there once or twice. She waved hello and I waved back. She said, "You look better," she said. "You're glowing," and I just smiled. I didn't say much, but I felt more, like my world was slowly opening. It wasn't loud, it wasn't fast, but it was real, and it was mine. I bought a phone, learned to text, sent pictures to, and watched short films. I made an email, joined a class, asked some questions, and made mistakes. But I laughed again, not at others, but at myself, and it felt nice. I was learning things just for me, not for duty, not for family. No one noticed, not at first because I was quiet, and change was slow. But inside me, the wind had moved, the door had opened, the light came in. I still worked hard, still paid bills, still cleaned home, still helped all. But one small part now belonged to me, and that part grew with each new day. I started walking every weekend morning to places nearby just for myself. I passed the farms, crossed the bridge, watched the water, and breathed in peace. I didn't rush. I didn't plan. I just walked slowly and listened to birds. The wind felt calm. The road felt soft. My steps felt light. My heart felt warm. One day I found a small old bench under a tree next to a hill. I sat alone. I closed my eyes. I smiled a little and stayed for hours. It became my place, my silent corner, where I could think and feel alive. No one knew. No one asked. It was my world, and that was enough. At work I changed. I spoke more. I asked questions. I shared small jokes. My boss noticed. He gave me thanks. He gave me trust and let me lead. I trained someone, a young new boy, he reminded me, of a younger me. He asked for help. I stayed late. I taught him slowly, and he smiled big. People around me saw the change. They said kind words. They asked me how. I said small steps. I said time helps. I said I just tried, nothing more. They nodded quiet. They looked surprised. They didn't know how lost I was. Now they saw a man who laughed, not loud or wild, but soft and true. Noor still came to the cafe. She stayed longer. She talked more. We shared tea. We shared ideas. We laughed at jokes. We sat in peace. She said to me, "You're different now." I said, "Maybe," and smiled back. Her voice was calm. Her eyes were kind. She never judged. She only listened. I told her once about my life, about my past, about my dreams. She didn't stop me. She didn't feel sorry. She just said, "That's strong." It was the first real talk I had in many years, and it felt good. She said, "You gave much," she said. "You stayed." she said. Now take back. I asked her once, do you think it's too late to start again? She held her tea, looked at me, and said with care, it's never late. That night at home, I read her words, again and again, like a soft song. I felt brave, not for the world, but for myself and my own path. I joined a class at the town hall about small business and saving plans. I sat with men much younger than me, but I didn't mind. I wanted to learn. I asked about loans, I asked about tools, I took notes, I made lists. Every night I worked on plans, I drew a chart, I made a budget. My idea was small, a garden shop with simple tools and helpful tips. I wanted to teach, old farmers too, how to use the newer ways. Some laughed, some didn't care, but I kept going because I believed. It wasn't easy. The steps were slow, the days were long, the doubts were many. But Noor helped. She gave advice. She printed signs, she made calls. She believed too, and that gave light to my tired heart and helped me push. I found a space behind the cafe, cleaned it well, and painted signs. I used my savings. I bought some stock. I set the shelves and opened small. The first day came, I waited calm, people passed, some came in. I sold 2 things. I smiled big. I felt proud. And I stood tall. More came later, some from farms, some from town, some just to look. I greeted all, I showed the tools, I shared what I knew, and helped them all. At night I sat outside my shop, drank tea warm, looked at stars. I remembered days. I stayed too long, stayed too quiet, stayed too still. But now I moved, not very far, not very fast, but still forward. I didn't run, I didn't fly, but I walked, and that was enough. People now ask for my advice. They ask me how. I made it work. I tell them slow, step by step, with small change and deep breath. No one gives time to the quiet ones, but sometimes silence grows strongest roots. I am still quiet, still kind, but now I know my value too. And Noor? She stayed near. She visits often. She brings flowers and good stories. We walk sometimes down the road past my bench near the hill. She holds my arm, we talk and laugh, we share silence and honest peace. It's not a dream, it's not a show, it's a quiet life, and it's finally mine. The shop grew slow, but it stayed strong with steady sales and happy faces. Old men came asking advice, young boys watched and learned in silence. I fixed tools, gave free tips, made friends daily, and earned respect. I wasn't rich, but I was proud, I slept well, and woke with hope. Each morning calm, I opened doors, swept the floor, and brewed my tea. Some days quiet, some days full, each one simple and worth the time. People smiled, they said thanks, they brought others, who came again. No loud music, no bright lights, just clean shelves and a kind man. Noor helped still more than before. She made forms and called suppliers. She taught me tech, helped with posts, showed me apps and wrote reviews. My shop was online, simple but clear, with photos neat and prices fair. Orders came slow but steady too. I packed them safe and delivered quick. My father watched from his chair near the window with soft old eyes. He never asked, but always smiled when I came in, tired but bright. One evening late, he held my hand and said with tears, "You did good." I said thank you with quiet pride, my heart full and my soul light. I kept walking every weekend down the road past our old tree. My bench stayed firm, my thoughts still deep. I sat and breathed and watched the sky. Sometimes birds flew, sometimes clouds stayed, sometimes rain fell, and I just sat. In that silence I heard truth, not from others, but from my heart. I met new friends from nearby towns. Some were farmers, some sold tools. We talked a lot, shared our ways, learned from each, and made a plan. Once a month we met and talked, shared problems real, and helped solve. We called it the Circle, a group of men who listened true and judged none. Each meeting day, we sat outside, brought food warm, and shared stories. Some lost homes, some lost love, some lost hope, but found new light. I wasn't alone. They weren't either. We all stayed, but started again. We laughed soft, sometimes cried. We stood strong with open hearts. My brothers called more than before, asking how and if I'm fine. They saw change, heard the news, saw the shop and felt surprise. They said, "We're proud." They said, "You grew." They said, "You inspire." I smiled wide. We didn't fight, we didn't blame, we were all tired but found peace. Noor and I walked more now, longer paths, slower steps, quiet talks. She held my hand, I held hers. We didn't rush, we didn't need. One evening clear she looked at me and said softly, "This feels right." I nodded slow, not big or loud, just full heart and calm joy. We planned small, not a wedding but a simple day with only friends. In my garden near the shop, under sun, with tea and bread. No rings big, no speeches long, just truth shared and eyes warm. We laughed more, not because of jokes, but because we were ready. I still worked every morning, every day with steady hands, but now I knew I wasn't stuck. I had choice, and that was gold. No one owned me, no one ruled. I gave my time, but kept myself. That was the win, not money big, but freedom soft and peace deep. People said, "He changed life." But that's not true. I just returned. Returned to me, to the boy once lost, with dreams quiet but still alive. Now I live, not for duty, not for name, but for the calm. I smile soft. I help more. I rest well, and I walk free. At night sometimes I read old notes from when I cried and felt small. I don't erase, I don't hide, I remember well, but carry light. The pain taught, the silence shaped, the weight built, and the love healed. I stayed once, for others all, now I stay for me first. The shop was calm, the days were slow, the work was simple, and I was steady. Every morning I opened the gate, cleaned the tools, greeted the birds, and felt peace. Customers came, some to buy, some to chat, some just smiled and walked away. I gave advice, shared kind words, fixed their tools, and wished them well. The sun was soft, the trees were green, my hands were old but full of strength. No rush in life, no noise loud, only moments. That felt true. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I didn't chase. I simply lived. Each breath I took, each meal I ate, each smile I saw felt like gold. One day in spring, Noor brought tea. She sat with me under the tree. We didn't talk for many minutes, just looked around and felt time. Then she said, "You look happy?" And I nodded with a warm smile. She added, "I'm proud of you." And my eyes filled. But I didn't cry. That night at home, I wrote a note just for myself. Nothing big. I wrote these words from deep inside. You made it here, and you stayed kind. Then I folded the small paper and placed it safe in my drawer. Not to forget, but to remind how far I came with quiet steps. Years passed fast. My beard turned white, my back bent low, but my heart stood tall. I started teaching boys from school how to fix, how to care. Some came lost, some came shy, some came sad, but left proud. I saw myself in each face full of dreams, but scared to try. I didn't shout, I didn't judge, I just showed what I knew. One nail at a time, one wire fixed, one tool cleaned, one hand held. Their eyes lit up when they learned, not just skills, but how to believe. And that made me more full than all money in all the world. One morning, bright, I woke slow, looked outside, and heard birds. I made tea, sat alone, opened the window and breathed deep. Then I walked through my shop, touching shelves, remembering days. Every crack, every stain, every note held a memory clear. Later that week, my brother called, said, "Come visit," said, "We miss you." I packed a bag, closed the shop, told Noor, just a few days. She smiled wide, hugged me soft, and said, "Enjoy, you deserve rest." I walked the road to the station and felt like flying, like wind free. On the train, I watched fields, cows, and clouds, kids and homes. So many lives, so many roads, and I was one among them all. But for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt whole. I didn't ask, "What if?" I just said, "This is enough." When I arrived, they all cheered, hugged me tight, served me food. We laughed loud, talked long, shared news, and drank tea. They said again, "You inspire us," and I said I just stayed. No fancy words, no long speech, just truth shared, and smiles wide. The next day I sat outside near the sea watching waves. Children played, dogs ran free, old couples walked all in peace. And I thought then about my past, all the turns, all the weight. Not with anger, not with pain, just with love and gentle pride. My phone buzzed, a message came from a boy from the shop. He said, "Thank you for everything." He said, "I feel strong." That one line made me still, made me breathe, made me smile. That was legacy, not buildings tall, but hearts changed. Back in the shop, I hung a sign, "Learn with me," in soft blue. Kids came more. Parents asked, "Can they help? Can they learn?" I said yes, always yes, because I knew the value deep. One kind hand, one true voice can change lives in silence. Noor and I grew slow, not in years but in joy. We didn't rush, we didn't need, because we found what mattered most. She said one night, "You saved many," I said. "They saved me too." Because giving light gives you more than all praise or loud fame. Now at dusk I write more, not to share but to keep. Stories small, stories real, about days, about people. One day maybe someone will read and feel less alone. That is enough. To keep writing, to keep living, to keep loving. In the end, I stayed here, in my town, with my tools. I didn't go far, didn't grow rich, didn't win big, but I was true. And sometimes that is the biggest win, to be true and be kind. So I sit now under my tree with tea warm and heart full.